Sure. All right. Well, Mr. Jeremy, I appreciate you hopping back on with us for how to plant a church part two. And not that there is a right or wrong way, but there is a lot of things that I know y'all have learned from working with plants now for 32 years at Baptist Church Planting Ministries that can really benefit and help new church plants in just giving them some guidance and direction. And I know, that we discussed a lot about that in first one. For anybody who hasn't watched the first one, at the end of this video, I'll make sure to put like a link to the first interview that we did with Brother Jeremy Rowlands. That way you can go learn more in depth about some of the stuff we talked about there, deputation, some of those things, how to structure a church. And he also gives a breakdown of Baptist Church Planting Ministries in more detail on that first one. And so I encourage y'all to go watch it. But just a recap of who Jeremy Rollins is, he's over a ministry called Baptist Church Planting Ministries that helps churches, get their churches launched and gives them some direction and teaching them how to do it and the right path to go with it. And again, the first episode, I encourage you to watch that. He breaks down in more detail on that. But for the sake of time, we're going to kind of pick up where we left off and kind of dive in to the nitty gritty of what we want to talk about today. And we're basically going to talk from start to finish. You're getting ready to start a church. What is that process leading up to like 12 months before the church plant? And kind of that timeline going all the way up to the launch day. And then even some things afterwards. I know that's where we left off last week that we were wanting to touch on today. So I'm going to kind of let you take it, Brother Jeremy, and explain as far as Baptist Church Planting Ministries. Like if y'all was coaching a new church plant, like a church planter's on here, obviously they need to reach out to y'all. So if you're a church planter and you're starting church, I encourage y'all to reach out to Brother Jeremy, and they can give you all this hands-on help in detail. But I want him to give you as much value as he can from this video. So I'm gonna let you take it away. Tell us about from the start to the actual launch date of the church. What does that look like with y'all?
Yeah, I appreciate being back on. And if I can be a help to anyone listening, please give us a call. Again, everything that we do, we pay for. We're totally supported by local churches. And on average, we invest about 4,500 to 5,000 into every church plant that we help with. And
Amen.
again, we've helped with 205 independent Baptist church plants. We will never say that we have planted 205 churches. That would be a mistake. We help churches reproduce churches. So we
Yeah.
are really the ecclesiastical obstetrician. We're helping a mother church give birth to a baby church along the way. And also, um, getting into the timeline now, I'm going to make a few assumptions, okay? So if we're going to get into setting a date, and I don't recommend setting a date early on, you might say we'd like to start in fall of 26 or spring of 29, or you may say that. But again, as we talked about last time, due preparation, diligence and preparation is so important. I've never heard a church planter say, I should not have prepared all that we did. I have definitely heard the other side of that, where they've said, I should have taken more time, I should have prepared. And so, something I didn't mention last time either, because I'm going to make a few assumptions, like I said, are the top reasons why church plants die. And you can go to our website, bcpm.org, and click on the resources. You can listen to the podcast on that and so on. But I'm just going to hit on the top three real quick. The first reason why church plants die, and by the way, 54% of all the church plants in the last 65 years have died before their
Wow.
second birthday. And so obviously our ministry was put in place to help make sure it's a healthy birth, a healthy adolescence, so it continues on 5, 10, 20 years down the road. But the first reason that church plants die is the lack of finances. And we just cannot avoid that. It's one of the number one reasons why missionaries come home from the field. It's why church planters get burned out. They try to work several jobs and so on. If finances are tight, it just starts to strangle everything and it will eventually kill the church. The second reason why church plants die is putting a novice in as the pastor. That's anti-biblical. A pastor cannot be a novice. And so
Right.
putting someone in who doesn't have the experience or the maturity yet, we do recommend that a church planter, if he hasn't already, he works under a pastor for a few years, and that pastor should have the liberty to say when that man is ready. And it may be a couple years, it may be 3 to 4 years. And we have definitely been working with a pastor when he has said, uh, sometime along the way of all this process, we've had a conversation where he has said, some things have come up and the church planter's not ready. And so we need
Yeah.
to, and sometimes you just need to pump the brakes for a while. It doesn't mean he's not going to plant a church. It just means we need to work on some things and he needs to mature a little bit and then let's go on. You don't want to put a novice in. That'll kill the church. The third reason is family issues. So the wife isn't ready yet, and we need to know that she's ready. The kids, for whatever reason, there might be a teenager that's just having issues right now, and those things need to be taken care of. It might be a health related. Two of the guys we've helped with in the last 10 years actually had a stroke while they're out raising support and they had to kind of pull back for several months, make sure the doctors say you're okay, and then go back at it again. So, and you can listen to all the other reasons as well. But so I'm assuming those things are taken care of. Those are not overlooked. They've been analyzed. I'm assuming the money is coming in. And by the way, again, we don't recommend you even put a date on the start until you have at least, if you're raising the funds, deputation, until at least you have 50% of that money is actually coming in, not promised, but it's coming in. And then you have your schedule full for the next 10 months, year to raise the rest. Once we get to that point, that marker, then we'll put a 10-month timeline checklist with everything that you can think about in planting a church. And by the way, you really don't need to think about all the details, even a building, anything like that, till you have 50% raised and you have your schedule full. And that gives you the liberty to just focus on raising the funds. There's no reason to get ahead and talk about all the details until you have those funds coming in, those deputation funds coming in. Okay, so now we're 10, 12 months out, and everything it looks like you're going to start in 10 to 12 months. Let's look at seasons real quick. When to start is always a good idea to look at that. If you're in the South, you're in Georgia, obviously, anywhere along the South, um, the best time to start anywhere in America really is September, October. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The summertime, a lot of people go on vacation. They're not committed. They're less committal. Okay. Once Labor Day hits, people are back in school. They're back from vacations. They're back in the grind and they're back in scheduling. And so if you could start in September, October, then you have the whole school year until people go crazy and nuts again in the summer. And so I say that because most pastors would understand that if you
Yeah,
pastored very long, people
for,
visit, Hawaii and they're
for
like,
sure.
we want to move here, and they think about moving and all that, and then September hits and reality hits, and they're back in, school and all that.
Yeah.
Uh, so in the South, you can also start in February, March. February, March are good times to start as well. If you're up north where there's snow and ice and all that, normally it's not good to start. If you're going to start in spring, to start till maybe April. You want to start when you have the best opportunity for people to travel in and actually join your services and so on. And so it's good to look at that before we schedule a date and all that. The next thing to look at is where you're going to plant a church. If it's near where you live now and you can keep your own home, that's one thing. If you're going from Georgia to Montana or from, California to say Philadelphia and you're going cross country, Then we have to look at selling your home, getting all that packed up and moved over. And so it's good to know that ahead of time because we do recommend that you move to the area 5 to 6 months ahead of time. So, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So we kind of look at all of that. We analyze all of that, where you're starting, weather, time, seasons, all of that. And we don't put a date until we check the local calendar as well. For instance, we were helping with a church plant in Arizona years ago, and it was a big PGA tournament was going to be in town the week they wanted to start. Well, obviously that would have been pretty bad idea because everybody's attention was on the tournament. It was a big golfing community. I mean, people are not going to attend your services at night when they're at the tournament all day and
Yeah.
all that. So we kind of look at the calendar as well. So here's a 10-month timeline. There are different stages to this, and I'm not going to go into all the details. I'm just going to mention some of those stages, and then if you want me to answer some questions about some of those details, I will. But the first stage is the really design stage. And that's where, if you don't have it yet, you might have a deputation website. You might have a Facebook for your deputation and all of that. Now it's time to look at the church, designing for the church. Do you have a logo? Do you have branding done? Do you have all your graphic design work done? We're going to look at all of that in at the very beginning of the 10-month process. Get all of that handled and done. We're going to have you work on signs. We're going to go over all of the design work for when you start, like what are you going to use to saturate the area, signs, banners, things like that. We're going to cover all of that up front because that takes time. The other thing we're going to look at are the three budgets now. There are three budgets that go into a church plant. One is your personal budget. And if you're raising support, you probably already have that. But we're going to look at that again. Do you have enough to live in the area? A few years ago, we had three church planters, one going to California, one going to Oregon, and one going to Montana. And because of the COVID years and housing went through the roof, pricing, all three of those men had to spend about 6 more months on deputation to raise enough to live in those areas. The average rent went from 2,000 a month to like 4,500 a month, like just over
Wow. That's
there.
crazy.
So we had to look at that. The second budget to look at is the startup budget, and we get this early on. This is like you need a piano, you need a pulpit, you need hymn books. This isn't a construction budget. We're not talking about building out a storefront. We're talking about your needs for a temporary hotel conference room, whatever. What are those needs? And then all of your advertising needs, mail out, and all of that, nursery items. We have it all listed. We cover it all and we get it. We get a good number. So the average number right now is $12,000 to $15,000 for that startup budget. Sound system, everything from visitor cards to your door hangers, things like that. So that's covered. The third budget is your what we call the first step budget. What does it look like when your church starts? The first couple of years, what does a church budget look like? And there's a lot of good info that goes into that. And we kind of look at all those early on so we know the direction we're going with that. So the first stage in the 10-month process is the design stage. The next stage is the delivery stage. And that's where you're actually focusing on saturating the area and starting the first start. So what goes into that stage? Well, moving to the area 5 to 6 months early. And by the way, if you're raising support, say you're going from Georgia to say Oregon, we recommend what we call the 80-20 in raising support, where you raise 80% from all the pastors you know in the Georgia area and then the Southeast. And then when you move 5, 6 months ahead, you have enough time to get to all the churches out there and meet all those pastors in that region and get the rest of your support. And that, I'm telling you, the guys, especially out in California, Oregon, Washington. Um, they will help a guy who comes in with a humble spirit and says, I'm here to plant a church. Can you help me? Most of the guys I know will love a church planter like that. They're tired of the guys coming out and not contacting any other pastors, trying to do it like they did back in Georgia or whatever. And then after 6 months, they got the tail between their legs and they're coming back to Georgia because it didn't work. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of great wisdom in asking local pastors to help you in those areas. We're helping a man right now go to Utah and north of Salt Lake. So he's already contacted several pastors out there. It's a different field, different people. What is it going to take? How do I reach these people? There's a lot of wisdom in that, but you can raise the rest of your support. Those men will have your backs, and then it also by moving out 5 to 6 months early gives your wife and kids time to acclimate, get into a house, get everything, all the walls painted, the everything hung, furniture, find out where schools are, the local hospital, grocery shopping, all of that. Get all that settled months before your launch. Okay, so that the delivery stage is also when we recommend 3 months of layered saturation. So 3 months, and this is where your ministry comes in. 3 months ahead, you're starting with the GM outreach if you're going to use that. 3 months ahead, we start what we call the saturation through we call it the saturation for evangelism. So you're not advertising the new church yet. 3 months ahead, you're advertising the gospel. You're advertising Jesus Christ. So for the first of those 3 months, we're saturating. We call it the Hope Campaign, the GM saturation, all of that, outreach saturation, and videos on the gospel, videos on, no, there is hope and in Jesus and all of that. And then the next 2 months, we recommend saturation for the beginning of the church. So we print up and we ship to them John and Romans, custom John Romans. We pay for all of that, the printing, design work, and shipping. And then we recommend getting one on every door for the next 1 to 2 months leading up to your first Sunday. And then that's actually when all the first of those 3 months, you're set. If you have the money, you're doing the GM outreach, you're doing signs, you're doing door hangers and mail outs and all of that for the gospel. Then you're doing the same exact thing for the information now for the church start. And what that does is it gives you a double saturation, and people see your information over and over and over and over. They see a different, now you're going to start a church, and this is all, and there's so many details that go into this. But what you want to create is you want to create an atmosphere where people feel like, boy, that church really means business. They're real
Yeah.
serious. It gives you credibility.
Yeah.
So by doing all that, you create an environment where people feel like, well, what they're doing is important, and I feel like I need to go. I need to at least contact them some way because I'm interested. And it gives you a lot of prospects. And by doing this 3 months ahead and 2 months ahead, the pastor starts getting all these contacts now. And
Yeah.
he can meet with them at coffee shops. You're not advertising, come to our church yet at the beginning. You're advertising Jesus. So you're meeting people in their homes, in parks, coffee shops, things like that. You're starting discipleship, you're starting Bible studies, things like that. And that's really biblical. You never see Paul and his teams go in and say, here's an A-frame sign, church on Sunday, come visit us. You
Yeah.
you see them go in and they preach Christ. They preach the word of God. And by that, the church starts organically. People are hungry for the word of God. They're hungry for hope. They're hungry for Jesus.
Yeah.
And you're meeting them and you're accumulating. So that then goes into the last of the delivery stage, and that is the actual start. What does that look like? Well, we help, part of our consultation is helping you, once you do those saturations, okay, what does your nucleus now look like? Do you have a bunch of families that are like starving? Do you have a few individuals that you're meeting with individually? Because if you have several people that are like starving for the word of God, maybe they have some type of background, then I recommend go ahead and starting a Sunday morning service, even before your launch Sunday. Maybe you don't want, maybe it's not that you need to start a Sunday morning service. Maybe you just need to start a midweek Bible study. You're moving on from discipling one-on-one necessarily, you're going to a Bible study. I do recommend having at least one, what some would call a preview service, where you have a Sunday service that you're not really advertising, and that's to work out all the kinks, sound system, lighting, parking, signage, all of that. Most guys have two or three of these leading up to their, what we would call like a grand opening Sunday, launch Sunday. So yeah, I believe in having a few of those ahead of time. A lot of guys have outreaches like in the park, if there's a lot of kids in town, they'll have outreaches in the park, cookouts, things like that, set up prayer tents. If it's going to be in like in August, September, water distribution, things like that. They try to get into different events to just get their name out and meet people and all of that. Um, Now we also recommend some type of what we call get acquainted meetings. And these get acquainted meetings, we started these from the beginning. They used to be 5 nights. Sunday night through Thursday night was recommended, and each night you introduce the pastor. You actually have a service. You introduce what type of church is being started, the singing, the preaching. Everything is to introduce what type of church is being started. It gives credibility to the pastor, knowing that there's other people involved with it. Other churches in the area come over and they help with those services. They help do nursery and ushering and all of that. And it's a wonderful time. If you got churches in the area that will do that, it revives them. Like they treat it as like a local missions out, trip, and it just revives them. They see a renewance of gospel centered ministry. Some people get involved that don't even get involved in their local church. They'll get involved helping with the new church plant, but that's okay because after that, then they start getting involved, in their local church and all that. So then you have your first Sunday, and sometimes we do recommend that maybe some churches in the area will send people over to help with some of the services, like nursery and ushering and things like that. Maybe to count the money. It's good not to have the pastor count the money, obviously, if you
Yeah.
don't need to. Um, so that kind of leads up to the launch grand opening Sunday, and I didn't mention this, but 6 months before the launch of the church, we recommend organizing a pastor's luncheon, and we host this. We pay for the meal. Um, and what happens is if you can send out invites 3 months ahead, and then you have the actual meeting 4 months ahead, and get all the pastors in that region physically to come together. Uh, I cover in those meetings, we cover as a ministry the three areas those churches can be involved with the new church plant. The first is the distribution of the John Roman booklets, getting one of those on every door. The second is the budgetary needs, that 12 to 15,000 startup budget. If those needs aren't met yet, those pastors can go back and raise up funds and meet those needs. And then the third area are the get acquainted meetings in the opening Sunday. If they could send people over, this is where we need people. And so pastors in the area, they love bringing their people to get involved with this, and it helps the church planter out so much because it just gives them boots on the ground and workers there, leading up to the opening Sunday. So obviously, there's a lot of other things. There's finding a building. We recommend that 6 months ahead. We'll go in and help find several options to meet in. What type of building? All that you can find on our website and so on. and we cover that through the podcast. There's so many details I've say skipped, but that's kind of you've got the design and then the delivery, and then after you start, then there's the development stage, the first 5 years, and we help you with that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll probably ask you some questions on the development stage in a minute. I want to
Sure.
pick some of the stuff you just mentioned a little bit. So yeah, no, I mean honestly, I mean just everything you just said there, I would imagine would give plenty of people a ton of ideas and
Mhm.
time frames in their minds to say, okay, now I kind of have a plan, even if you just watch what you just said, because obviously, if someone's planting a church, if their pastors are planting a church and they don't know anything about church planting, then yeah, in their minds, they're all of them, all the stuff you just mentioned probably answered 1,000 different questions. When do we need to move there? What's the best practice for this? And so no, and I like what you mentioned. I like what you mentioned at the beginning too, especially about the financial piece. Because yes, I completely agree. I guarantee you most church plants that do die because of financial constraints. I mean, even in their marriages, it hurts their
Mhm.
marriages and their relationship with
Yes.
their spouses. And so yeah, for sure. So just a few things to talk. I want to point out just to get some more clarity on it. So like you got that design phase, which I completely agree. I remember when we were going to start our church, I had a pastor tell me this, and he said, I don't even know if he was a pastor out there. He might have been an evangelist at this time, but he said, he's like, if you're gonna do it, he said, at least do it right. He said, don't
Mhm.
rush into it. Plan it, have everything prepared for it as far as like just have everything printed out, logo, have everything
Sure.
ready. Don't just throw
Yep.
something together.
Right.
So I like that. Yeah, design your stuff ahead of time. Get a nice structure of what you want your church to look like. So I like that. So you got the design phase, which makes complete sense, leading up to the delivery phase. And then, the delivery phase, just to kind of clarify, because I kind of know what y'all's delivery phase looks like since we have worked with a couple of y'all's church plants thus far as what that 3 month window looks like.
Sure.
So, yeah, the delivery phase, just to clarify, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but basically about 3 months out before the service, they're starting to push what y'all call the Hope Campaign, which is
Mhm.
basically just salvation, trying to get Jesus into the hearts and homes of the community for that third month right there leading up to the thing. And
Mhm.
whether you're doing it, obviously with gospel track, saturation, door knocking and stuff, but also if they're utilizing the digital track ministry through GM Baptist Outreach, then we're running ads for it as
Mhm.
well. But that's what that third month looks like. Saturation of the gospel. There's not really invitation to church so much. I mean, unless someone asks, I'm sure there's going to be some talk of it, but that third month. Then when it hits 2 months before the service, that's when you start inviting them to church, correct? Just to clarify when it comes to is it
We promote the launch date of the new
date.
church, but also the Bible, the John Roman distribution is heavily. It's about 6 weeks out is when we really hit that heavy. Um, but again, what this does is it gives the pastor time to follow up on all of these leads he has now leading up to the launch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and so and that's it makes perfect sense. I love it. Like I think it's all the great. I remember when we first started our church, like I said, we didn't know anything about anything. We just do a sign up and
Sure.
started knocking on doors like 3 weeks ahead of time. And it was,
Right.
if I could go
Yeah.
back and do it, I would do it exactly the way that you're talking about. We would be saturating it 3 months ahead. We would, really be doing it right. So I love that. Now, when it comes to you hit the 2 weeks there, John and Romans pushing, starting to tell people about the grand opening service. Then that month before the special day event, I know that's when we're doing ads for them, we're really pushing that plan your visit to the grand opening service,
Right.
and you're really hammering that opening service date that month beforehand, saturation wise, getting churches there to, helping pass out, invitations and tracts and stuff, saturating, and whether you're doing paid advertising or not, your just goal is to saturate that month before announcing the grand opening service of this new church plant. And does all that sounds pretty right, what I just explained there, that
Yeah,
3 months?
it does.
Perfect. Okay. So that's great advice. Everything that we just discussed, if you're listening, you're a church planner and you're thinking, you need to write that stuff down and get that timeline in place. So here's what I want to ask the question wise, because I think there wasn't a whole lot of clarity on it as far as when this takes place. I know you mentioned about those interest parties where it's like whether it's 4 or 5 days. I've heard of churches doing those as well. I've never been a part of a church doing one. I don't know what those look like. So what would that look like if a church planter is listening, talking about an interest party? Like we know what it is. You explain a little bit about what it is, the preaching stuff. But when would that take place in that timeline?
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate you asking about that. the get acquainted meetings, we call them the GAMs, are normally Sunday night through Tuesday night before the grand opening Sunday.
Okay,
So
so it would be the week before the service.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
And because and by the way, though, if you're going to do get acquainted meetings, those are advertised just as much as the opening Sunday,
Yeah,
because there will be people that come to check you out in the get acquainted meetings because but they're not ready to attend on Sunday, or they may have another church they attend, or their work schedule or whatever. But there are the get acquainted meetings are not just about getting people from the community to come to the meeting and see what everything's all about. Obviously, you want people to come to the meetings. You want people to be saved, to receive Christ, to get help, to give clarity and all that. But the biggest reason to have the get acquainted meetings is credibility. When other pastors are there those nights, we have them. I mean, sometimes there's five, six, seven, eight pastors, for at one night. They're there. They've got people from their church. Sometimes there's 100, 150 people, and we don't. And I MC the meetings. I always say it's good to have several churches here. Obviously, these churches won't be here Sunday, but they are here because they love this pastor. They love this new church. And we're going to have this pastor come up right now, and he's going to say a few words about how their church is behind this new work. And this pastor comes up, and we have one come up at the offering, and to pray at the end of the meeting, and to open the meeting, and all of that. And so each pastor, they take 2 or 3 minutes to say credible remarks. And so this happens almost 100% of the time. Almost 100% of the time, if you have a person visiting from the community that attend the get acquainted meeting, they will continue on with that work because because of the credibility. They believe they can follow this new pastor. They believe in what he's doing. They can trust him. And if you ask most missionaries and church planners, what is your biggest need in your area, or what is one of the biggest needs in your area? They always get to the credibility. I wish people would just trust me. I wish they would follow what we're doing here, especially overseas, in Italy and other areas. I wish they would just trust what we're doing. Well, that credibility comes through the get acquainted meetings. We often have them, recorded, put on their website so that people who couldn't attend, they can go to their website or Facebook, whatever, and they can see these videos, YouTube, and they'll understand there's several churches in the area behind this work, and so it gives them credibility. The other great thing about the get acquainted meetings is that these other churches come together to help. They bring people, and one of two or both will happen because of this. One of the things that happen is the people are revived, like I mentioned earlier, and they'll go back and they'll say, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we plant a church out of our church? And it always gets those gears turning. And so we often see more church plants from churches helping a church plant.
yeah,
The other thing that happens is there's always young people there. There's always teenagers. There's always some young, families, whatever, where they start to get the call, hey, the Lord's like, I want you to plant a church. I want
yeah.
you. And so there's so much that goes into these meetings. I highly recommend at least having the three. Some guys have done one a week for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks leading up to. We'll help you, whatever you want to do, whatever you pray and ask, follow the Lord, and we'll help you do it. But credibility is a great need when you start.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, I like that. No, that sounds good. Yeah, I've heard people talk about the interest meetings. I've just never knew exactly I know what they were about, but I never
Mhm.
really knew the timelines of what the goal was with them. And so the credibility piece, that makes complete sense. And yeah, I have seen people do it like once a week leading up or something, like a month or so out.
Mhm.
So that sounds good. I mean, yeah, that's all valuable information. So what are your thoughts on, like, I know there's different, different ways of doing it. What are your thoughts on like your opinion wise? as far as when it comes to a launch team. Like you hear people use that terminology these days, launch team. You hear people talk about, and I know that's
Right.
kind of in different spaces. But I've seen plenty of churches, even good solid churches do this, and they talk about that trying to build a team of people in the community, a launch team in the sense of having those interest parties, like I guess periodically a couple months leading up to it, trying to build like a core team that's going to commit to
Mhm.
being there with you on that launch day from people in the
Mhm.
community that don't go to church. What do you think about that? Have y'all ever done that or?
Oh, sure. I mean, and by the way, by doing 3 months ahead, the saturation, hope campaign, evangelism, all of that, you tend to already build a nucleus from that. So that often you gather several people together from just saturation starting 3 months ahead. So that is a normal outcome. You start having discipleship, Bible studies, and then by the time you have the launch Sunday, you have a handful of people that believe in what you're doing. They got your back. They're there, and if you want to call them a launch team, you could.
Yeah.
I just wrote this summer, and I'm going to be doing the podcast on it soon on the three different teams to start with in starting a church. And because there's a lot to be said, you can definitely have an organic launch team where that comes from the people in the community. You start reaching them months early, and you have that, like I just said, that handful. Or if you're sending or reproducing, or Mother Church is nearby, say 30 miles away or whatever, sometimes a nucleus will go with you from the sending church. And most pastors don't have any problems with that. There was a time where, that might have been an issue with some, but most pastors are, hey, if we're going to go start this church, if you feel led to help, come see me. I want to pray with you about this. But if you want to go, and if you live in that area and you've been traveling to our church, then hey, go help him, and the Lord be with you, right? So that's another way to start, from people from your church actually helping you start, and that can be very favorable and very helpful. The third launch team that ironically doesn't work out is when you accumulate people along the way, friends from college, other people that may have known you previously, decide they're going to move to your area and be part of that team. Um, Ironically, 9 times out of 10, those end up not working out. And really, the bottom line is you have to go into it knowing that the pastor is the pastor. And although we're going to move there and help him, we need to submit from day one to what God's doing in his life. Because oftentimes when it's people that you've known, like friends, college mates, like that, they tend to think that they're on the same, if I can say, they're on the same level as the pastor as far as influence, and so they come with their ideas, and then when the pastor's ideas clash, then there's issues, and they just need to go in with the right spirit. I'm not saying it can't be done, but they need to go in with the right spirit. So
No, that's great advice.
anyhow,
Solid advice. Yeah.
I've already done the interviews. I'm doing the write up, and then the podcast is coming soon. But I get asked that a lot.
Yeah. No, that's solid advice. Yeah. I've seen the same scenarios, exact same thing before. So yeah, that's good advice. When it comes to so that was actually another question I was about to ask. What do you think about stuff like that? About like preachers or something, friends that you know somewhere else. Like, do you think them coming together and starting a church together is a good idea? And I guess you kind of just answered that. So that was a
Well,
good.
in most of the mission board directors I know from mission boards, I learned this years ago. It was really, I had to step back. I had to think, I haven't thought about that. But I began to hear from them that one of the major areas of counsel on the mission field is partners not getting along. Like
Wow.
it's not the dangers of the mission field. It's not the fine. It's partners that have actually gone to college, learned a language, raised support, go to the because they're all, hey, you're going to Asia, I'm going to Asia. Let's go together. And then they get there, and then they don't get along
Yeah.
That's a big, big, Paul and Barnabas. You've got some time things that just happen. What I didn't cover there real quick is that sometimes your church that's sending you, if it's close enough, they may have people that want to come over and help you for a few months, but they don't want to join. They just want to help you. We'll help you and your pastor through that as well. There are some things that definitely need to be in place for that to work out well,
Yeah.
and that's a whole nother issue. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's it's funny, because even like in the business realm, there's this saying called the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. So
Yeah.
I think it's very similar. I think it's very
Yep.
similar to,
It's it's
planting a church.
eye-opening. When you get into it, it's eye-opening. It's like, wow, I don't want to
Yeah.
ever partner with anybody again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, no. I've done a partnership in the past just for like an endeavor that had nothing to do with church stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a terrible experience. Yeah, because it's hard to find people that are on the same
Yeah.
mindset as you. You're always
Right.
going to have different outlooks. And if you can't, if that working together piece, when you're on the same decision making level is a big deal when it comes to any area. You can't start an
Yeah.
ice cream shop with a partner
Right.
without it being on the same, there's going to be, if
Well,
not, yeah.
someone has to be the leader.
Yeah.
Someone has to be the pastor. And just everyone has to know that going into it. They have to know it. And they have to be willing to say, whenever things get a little bit tense, I'm willing to back off and submit to the pastor. That
Yeah.
has to be laid out at the beginning.
For sure. No, that's solid advice. Yeah, if anyone is listening if yeah, that's definitely solid advice to think about. Good stuff. So, perfect. Well, we answered some of those questions, launch team and stuff. So, let's cover now a little bit. I think that's about it leading up to it. So, what about that after? Give us what was that third phase you said after the first 5 years?
Development. Yeah. I,
Talk
I
about
like I like alliteration, so it has to be a D. So
I like alliterating it too. Yeah.
yeah.
Tell me about the development stage. What is your
Yeah.
what's that look like?
Yeah, and again, you can go on and listen to what I've said in detail, but the development stage is really your first 5 years. It can be more or less, but the first 5 years, you've really got to concentrate on three areas. One's evangelism. Just because you have 80 people show up your first Sunday or whatever doesn't mean you have to pull off of evangel. You have to
Yeah.
keep evangelizing, set a goal. Maybe you're going to do knock on 200 homes a week or whatever. You're going to talk to 25 people and give the full gospel out a week or whatever. Set a goal, keep the goal, keep it fresh, whatever. Obviously, if your church attendance is 80 to 100, you're going to get a lot of new contacts through them that are going to not, so you may not be doing door knocking as much, but until you get to kind of that phase, you got to keep inviting, keep getting the gospel. And so, with that said, I recommend twice a year doing a saturation, just like the Hope campaign, the 1 month saturation, twice a year, in the fall and in the spring, preferably. And you can do a fall and then like a spring Easter campaign. That's fine, but you really need to do two a year. For most churches, it's going to cost you about 5,000 each saturation. That's about what it's going to cost you to do a full mail out, full social media blitz, full door hanger signs, and you want to do it within a 4 week, a very concise time frame. And it's called the law of seven touches. It's a marketing thing I learned years ago where you want to touch somebody seven different ways with your material. And it takes psychologically, it takes about seven different times for them to realize what they've been given, what they're looking at,
Yeah.
and for them to really make a decision to come to your church or whatever. So the evangelism you can't lay off, and you've got to pour money into it, time, effort, twice a year, saturate, saturate, saturate. The second one is mobilization, and that is now that you have evangelized, now you need to mobilize who your attenders. And there's a lot that goes into this. What if they're not members? Can they still be involved? Can they still be active? You've got to realize that when you first start a church, especially for the first year, people are hesitant to join. They just are. Some people will jump right in, but the majority of people are hesitant, and it's because you're still building credibility. And after 2 to 3 years, people feel more like, okay, this you're here to stay, we'll join. Okay, so what does that look like then when you're mobilizing them, when you're training them and you want them to be involved and so on? And again, I think we talked about this last time. I would slow go any ministry, starting any ministry that requires mature leadership. I would just slow go
Yeah.
that, like having like 3 Sunday school classes, or okay, now you need 3 teachers. Okay, well, I would slow go that for a while. You need people that can teach. They're sound in their doctrine. They're full of the Spirit. They're quality people. So when you're mobilizing, you're really thinking of people that can help out, help set up chairs, whatever, help distribution, help clean, help do th but it's important to get people involved. That's what I'm getting at. The mobilization is everybody who's attending faithfully, try to find a way they can get involved, even if they're not members.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last of that is you've got evangelizing, mobilizing, and then you've got the structuralizing the church. And what I mean by that is you've got to think about long-term structure now of the church, the healthiness of the church. And I go into detail with that, but I can help with that. So there are some things to look out for. Your first few years, you don't want to kill what God has started there. You want to be healthy. So what are some things that are healthy? Well, one of them is keeping your family healthy. You don't want to burn your wife out. And you need to, if you haven't yet, if you're listening, you need to go to our site and at least listen to and read the one article on your wife. Is she the assistant pastor, or is she assisting her husband, who is the pastor? There's a huge difference. But anyhow, you want to spend time with your family, keep them healthy. You want to keep yourself healthy, okay? You want to make sure you're having that daily time with the Lord and all of that. So what I mean by that is you want to make sure that there's nothing that you have started that's going to take so much time and attention that you're going to neglect your family or your own health. And we talk about that as well. And then you don't want to start ministries that are going to drown, if I can say that, drown your church and cause it to choke. Um, Having a bus ministry is wonderful. I was a bus director for 7 years, but I would hold off. I have been, when I was a staff evangelist at the Bill Rice Ranch, I remember there was a church who needed somebody to come and preach on a Sunday, and I went, and it was a church plant. They had a storefront. They had like 4 adults, and then all of a sudden, this van pulled up, and like all these kids jumped out. And I mean, they were running I was there to preach. That's why I was there. They were running all over the place. I mean, they were tearing the place up. And one of the older ladies who were there, she looked at me and said, um, "So can you help us? Like, what are you going to do about all the kids?" And I had never been there before. I'm a guest preacher. I'm like, "You want me to entertain the kids and preach today?" I mean, what?
Yeah. Right.
But they had it in their mind that a church isn't a church unless you have a van or bus ministry.
Yeah.
Well, if you start that too early, you're going to drown the church, and you don't want that to happen either.
For
So
sure.
there's just for 5 years we give consultation, and a lot of guys call me on a regular basis. Say, what do you think about doing this? What are some negatives and positives, negatives about this kind of a ministry? And I'm in an area where there's a big jail, and what do you think about a jail ministry? There's just so many opportunities, but you don't want to get over your skis on this. You want to take it slow, let God build His church, and and keep it simple, like we said last time. You're there to pray, preach, and praise, and God will build His church.
For sure. Yeah, no, I love it. Sounds good. So yeah, the 5 year mark, I heard a preacher say this one time, and whether there's any truth to it or not, but I heard a preacher say a lot of times church planners will quit too early. He said, it takes 5 years to get to know the community, and it takes 5 years for the community to get to know you.
Uh,
And there's a lot of truth to that, because I think our church, when we started ours, I mean, we probably didn't get our first adult faithful attender like that joined the church and was a faithful attender till like 6 months into it, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we'd have people visit, but as far as like
Right.
actually consistently staying faithfully, we didn't get our first adult, and it was just an adult lady that stayed. It was like after 6 months, and she
Yeah.
finally joined the church, and then we started getting a couple faithful families sticking because once you can get one or two, and that's why I think when you do start with a faithful like nucleus of people already, then it
Hmm.
kind of can get traction a little more, just in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we started with nobody and we didn't really have a group at all, so it was hard to
Hmm.
get people to want to stay when they came to church, and there was just like the pastor and his family and like nobody else there. So
Yeah.
so it was one of
Yeah.
those things to where it just took time. I think after a year and a half, we started really getting a couple faithful families, and our church didn't really start growing good till after 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, and God's blessed, and it's exciting what the Lord's doing now. We're building a sanctuary and stuff, and people look at it and they're like, "Yeah, man, that's awesome what the Lord's doing at y'all's church."
Right.
But the reality is, the first 2 years was rough, man. I could have quit
Yeah.
that first year and felt
Yeah.
justified. But
Yeah.
the reality is it takes time, and I say,
Yeah.
yeah, if you can stick to it, stick there. Obviously, if after 3 years you ain't got nobody coming, then you want to reassess maybe why no one's coming.
Right.
Are you evangelizing like you should? Or
Right.
are you just sitting there Calvinistically thinking everybody's going to show up without you doing anything? That's, you know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
So reassess what you're doing. But I do think you need to
Mm.
have that vision of commitment to trying to stay there at least 3 to 5 years before. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I do have a relationship with a lot of the guys and their pastors and so on, and it's usually around 3 years where I might get a call and it goes something like, Brother Rowland, God's been really working here and so on, but I think maybe my time is up. Maybe it's time to move on. And so I did a whole article and podcast on it's not time to go, it's time
yeah,
to grow. And it
yeah,
really is. And a couple of things you've hit on that I was told, and it rang to be true. Number one, a crowd builds a crowd. I was told once you get to about 30 people, that
yeah,
visitors that come in see, okay, now it's a crowd and they
for
tend to
sure.
stick. So you go from 30 to 50 pretty quickly, and then kind of from 50 to 70, and then it kind of stalls for a while. And just thinking out loud, tends to be the stage growth. But so a crowd builds a crowd. Another pastor told me you will probably have three different congregations before you stabilize and mature. And he was right. He was right. After about 5 years, I could basically preach all my first year sermons again, and
Yeah,
nobody would even. And then I was told this several times that often your scaffolding, your first people, will move on after 1 or 2 years. And so you'll lose the people who were kind of the pioneers, the ones who helped you start. And that didn't happen for about 3.5 years for me. But then in that 3.5 to 4 year mark, I probably lost 30 some people who had started or came in that first year. And they were all just different reasons, moving out. One lady said the church was getting too big,
this is
various
a problem.
reasons.
Yeah,
So, but if I had not been told that, I would have pulled all of my hair out,
yeah,
trying to figure out what is wrong here. But it was really growth. It wasn't time to go, it was time to grow and let God build his church and me. Let God, I've already preached everything I was taught in college after 3 to 5 years. I've already preached everything I know. Okay, now it's time for me to grow, you
yeah,
know, and go grow past my education, grow past my wisdom at the time, grow time for really God to do work in me. And I'm telling you, that's really when you mature, your church matures, and then you set yourself up for long-term healthy church growth after that.
for sure. Yeah, another thing I wanted to bring out that you mentioned about that 5 years, you mentioned about evangelizing, keep the gas on evangelizing. I did a podcast with Zach Kinsman a little while back just on their church plant, and I think they've been started 3 or 4 years, and they're running like 170 something people consistently. They've had really healthy, good just church growth as far as
Yeah.
that goes. But I did an interview with him, and I was talking to him about some stuff. Something that he pointed out, and because I was, asking him what his thoughts are on why, the Lord's kind of been blessing their stuff. And he said this, and I thought it was really good. He said they have always from the very launching, leading up to the launch, all the way after, they have been very aggressive in evangelizing. They have not stopped evangelizing.
Mm-hmm.
They've been willing to invest money, a lot of money in evangelizing. Like he was talking about how, like literally, like he said, we raise money and spend a lot of money every year on evangelism. He said, we'll do all kind of stuff. They do social media ads and all kind of stuff, but they also buy
Right.
billboards, put
Yeah.
signs in all their churches, members' yards, order signs for people to be able to put in there. I mean, all kind of stuff. He's like, they're just huge on evangelism and they haven't took their foot off the gas of it and I think that's very a powerful truth when it comes to that is like, just keep that gas on evangelism. You just never know when you're going to get that next solid family that is going to be a faithful core backbone of your church. And it's just that continually just pushing evangelism.
Right.
I think it's a good advice. Don't think that just because you throw a sign up, people are going to come. That is the
Right.
craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And I've heard this statement, Brother Jeremy, and I'm telling you, it blows my mind sometimes. But I talk to people, and they'll say things like this. Well, we're just, praying them in these days.
Yeah.
I'm
I
all
know.
for praying them in.
I
Yes,
know.
pray. God
I
answers
know.
prayers, but God uses what we do. Paul said,
Yeah.
I have sowed, Apollos is water, but God gave the
Yeah.
increase.
Yeah.
God increases on what Paul sowed and what Apollos watered. And so, what if they had sowed nothing? What
Yeah.
if God.
Exactly.
And so the
Exactly.
aspect is it gets at me though, and I think it's just kind of a Calvinistic mentality or something, as if God's just going to give the increase and them do no work involved, and it's
Right.
really just gets kind of lazy. But anyways, I hope they don't offend anybody. But in the reality
No.
is
Well,
don't be lazy.
and the one thing you mentioned is, evangelism. So that means a lot of different things to some people. Some
Yeah,
people look at evangelism as we have knocked on every door in our town and nobody wants to come. Okay. So when they say, well, we've evangelized this whole town, well, again, um, I think of evangelism as more of a saturation evangelism. Find every different way to get the gospel, not just knock on doors. I think that's one way,
for sure.
okay?
Yeah,
But the churches to actually saturate see so much more fruit than just doing one thing. Like I remember years ago, we were really emphasizing mailing out. Mail outs and those yard signs were kind of the number one ways that people were seeing and responding to your church. And I remember, several people would say, "Well, we mailed out to everybody in town and we didn't hear anything." Okay, but did you also do this and this and this and this at the same time, and
yeah,
that's the difference we live today. You go down the road, people are on their phones, even driving, right? They're going to miss your sign.
yeah,
They're going to miss the billboard. But if it's on your social media, okay, now they see it. Then they see the sign. Then they see some in their doors. Then they see
yeah.
something in their mailbox. Then and it's a boom, boom, boom. Down in Daphne, Alabama, a few years ago, we were helping with a church plant there, and me and the pastor went to a restaurant, and we gave the lady a invite. It was leading up to his grand opening, his launch Sunday, and she said, "I've already got like six of these." She said, "I'm coming. All right, I'm coming."
Yeah,
But you've got to saturate heavily. And like I said, twice a year, if you can do that, and then
yeah.
even after the 5 years, you're going to be seeing fruit from that. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and I know we've been on here for a while, so we'll wrap it up here we'll wrap it up with this. But yeah, and what you said is very true. Well, we've evangelized the whole community. Well, we knocked on every door. Okay. What about the 75% of doors nobody answered? You're just gonna they just assume that they've been evangelized. And so the
Right.
aspect is just kind of even recap what you're saying. Like even at our church, like we have faithful members from door knocking. We have faithful members from our direct mail flyers we've sent out. We have faithful members from our digital track ministry, the paid
Yeah.
advert. And so we have
Yeah.
faithful members from all kind of different avenues of outreach. So yeah, you need to do several different things because you never know who you're going to catch with that one.
Right.
But
Yeah.
even when you have done one and you're like, oh well, we just didn't see no one from it. We've tried it. You just did it one time.
Right. You just did
You've
it
only
one
sent out
time.
one
I know.
one
I
mailer.
know.
It's not that it doesn't work. You just got to keep
No.
doing it. Keep doing it. It might be that fourth mailer they get from you that they're like, you know what, I've been talking about needing to get in church. I'm gonna come to church. And it's not that it didn't work the first time. It's just they
Yeah.
just didn't wasn't ready that time, you know. And
Right.
so it's the same thing like door knocking.
Yeah.
You didn't evangelize the whole area. You know, do it
Yep.
again, do it again, do it again.
Yeah.
Send out a mailer, send out a mailer, send out a mailer. Run
Right.
ads, run ads, run ads. Keep doing it because you just never know when the Holy Ghost is gonna take it and use it in someone's
Exactly.
life.
Yeah.
Um. Anyways, yeah, that was
Exactly.
another rabbit. I think that was some good material. We've covered a lot of stuff. Honestly, I had a couple other questions I was going to ask. I'm like, well, you know, maybe we need to do a part three. But anyways, that's
It's
good.
up to you. Listen, we didn't talk about like building selection and when and should you buy a building and fix it up? Should you just rent a temporary building? And then the other thing is location. There's so many uh, helps with that. Guys may find a great area to meet in, but it's behind several buildings and difficult to get to. You're going to spend so much money trying to get people to that building. Um, you might spend the same amount of money getting a facility up on the main road or whatever. There's a lot to talk about with that. But again, we have all the podcasts too about that and so on our site. But whatever you want to do, brother, I
Yeah.
would do
Yeah,
as much as we can.
we may do a third video eventually, and we might could go ahead and get one scheduled or something because I do have a couple other questions just as far as insights on stuff that I'd like to get your mindset on things that you see with church plants as far as that goes that we never covered. So, anyways, we'll get together on that, maybe do a part three or something. But I've
Anytime.
I've enjoyed it, man. I think if
I
someone
have
listens
too.
to this video, they've had to have gotten value from somewhere. There's just plenty of stuff that was covered. That even if someone has already started a church and has been going for years could get
Mhm.
value from. So I appreciate you hopping on. And if there's anything you need from me, let me know. But this is for everybody who wants to get a hold of Brother Jeremy if they want to or learn about his ministry, or if you're starting a church and you want help starting it. Jeremy Rowland, Baptist Church Planting Ministries, hold on, Baptist Church Planting BCPM.org, correct?
That's it.
There you go. And so go to their website. You can get a hold of them there. Is there any other ways you people can contact you?
Well, I mean, we're on BCPM's on Facebook as well and on X, Twitter. But my phone number is there as well. If you're a church planner, someone who's a pastor, even in ministry, don't feel free to call or text me and say, "Hey, I saw you on this, and I'd like to pick your brain." I will call you back. We'll have a conversation.
Perfect. And that's not just church planters in the United States. That's church planters
Right,
anywhere around the world, missionaries
right,
wise. Perfect.
right.
Awesome. All right, brother. Well, have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you for your
You
time.
too. Thank you.